The Price is Right was going to have its regularly scheduled episode. Then a university student hit $10,000 after dropping a Plinko chip. She proceeded to do it twice more. It all went dark just as she was about to drop her fourth chip, though. After a producer snatched the chip in mid-air, the game was fixed. Everyone in the crowd was taken aback. No one spoke for 15 minutes. This covert tragedy almost ended the run of America's beloved game show. Additionally, CBS made an enormous effort to conceal it. Bob Stewart was an employee at New York City's RCAD in 1956. He happened upon a live sidewalk auction while strolling along 50th Street one day at lunch. He had a brilliant idea while watching the enthusiastic bidders. Imagine a game show where participants had to guess the pricing. The concept was dubbed the auctioneer by him. Stewart had prior expertise in the broadcast media. Before to NBC, he worked for WNEW. He then encountered Monty Hall, who would go on to become a famous host, not long after. When Hall asked Stewart if she had any ideas, Stewart was introduced to Goodson-Todman Productions. The Price is Right was born out of that meeting. On November 26, 1956, NBC broadcast the pilot episode of the show. In the role of host Bill Cullen. It was a total bust for the pilot. Due to a stagehand missing a cue, Cullen smashed into a wall during filming. It was prevalent practice in the 1950s for NBC to purchase a show before watching the pilot. The network provided financial incentives to abandon the project after the accident. However, Bill Todman and Stewart declined. They insisted that NBC maintain their contract since they loved the show. That was the right choice. American game shows were facing difficulties in the late 1950s. When one Dotto opponent discovered a notepad containing answers intended for another player in 1958, it led to a cheating controversy. At that very moment, an inquiry was initiated. Multiple game shows turned out to be rigged quite quickly. The most well-known example is the 21-year-old Charles Van Doren, who was instructed and given the answers beforehand. Big money quiz programs were mostly non-existent by 1960. Networks were compelled to clean up because of congressional inquiries and new rules. However, none of the others were cancelled except The Price is Right. November 26, 1956 was the premiere on NBC. The layout was uncomplicated. Players had to guess the values of commonplace goods without going above the limit. You couldn't get away with cheating. Hosted by Bill Cullen. Announcing was Don Pardo. The audience adored it. A prime-time version was available by the fall of 1957, thanks to its rapid growth. The first game show to air in color was also this one. The Price is Right was able to garner more trust while others were yanked from the air. On the surface, it appeared to be sincere. At a time when viewers felt misled, that just added to its popularity. There was a decline in 1963 ratings. NBC decided to cancel the show. ABC intervened without delay. The show's transfer to their network occurred on September 9, 1963. A few adjustments were done. Don Pardo was replaced by Johnny Gilbert. Famous people performed for an undetermined number of viewers. The fundamental concept, however, remained unchanged. Estimate the cost. Stay above. In the background, the principal sponsor was Lever Brothers, which is now Unilever. Imperial Margarine, Whisk Detergent, and Handy Andy Cleaner were some of the products that were promoted on the show. Unique to them was their Dove Beauty Bar. Every week, regardless of whether they won or not, contestants were awarded Dove bars. That was astute marketing. Dove became a prominent worldwide brand. From 100 grams to 90 grams, that was the size the company's bars were in 2022. But maintained or increased pricing. Although there were attempts to renew it, the first run of the show concluded on September 3, 1965. Cancellation of the primetime edition occurred in 1964. The daylight version continued for an additional year. How skilled viewers got at estimating pricing was one strange issue. People were asked to submit their responses over mail as part of the home viewer showcase. The number of ways to win a prize package was 32 by 1959. Producers resolved the matter via phone and telegram after sorting through sacks of letters. Things got out of hand. The Price is Right returned to television on September 4, 1972, after a 7-year hiatus. This time, it had an entirely new appearance and texture. There was a revival on CBS with the name The New Price is Right. They scrapped the previous quiz system and replaced it with something new. The emphasis shifted to estimating the cost of commonplace goods. It was a basic concept. Each participant had to bid in whole dollars, and no one could go higher than the stated amount. At first, there were only 3 price games and the event lasted only 30 minutes. However, it sufficed. The trend caught very quickly. By June 1973, the term new had been removed from the title. The show's voice had been discovered. It was authentic. It was just. The game was accessible to all. Being fast or clever wasn't necessary. It was sufficient for you to be aware of prices. Reason being, that's how it became effective. When memories of the 1950s game show cheating scandals were fresh in people's minds, The Price is Right had an air of candor. Something else memorable came from the show as well. A revolutionary statement was made by announcer Johnny Olson in 1972. "Come on down," he invited. That one expression entered the lexicon of Americans. The crowd would go wild whenever he said that. Onlookers leaped out of their chairs, yelled, applauded, embraced random people, and dashed for the stage. Someone yelled. There was mayhem. I was enthralled. The practice of reactions at home became more common as time went on. People did cartwheels, danced, or even sobbed. The show even included vintage footage of victims being hoisted to the front or collapsing in agony in subsequent years. That trio of words set the stage for everything. Another significant shift followed. Longitudinal expansion of the show occurred on December 1, 1975. The relocation may have begun as early as November 3, according to some stories, but it was still a major event. CBS expanded the rates into an hour-long program. As a result, they were able to play 6 price games rather than 3. Also, they were able to fit in something completely new, the Showcase Showdown, because of this. During that time, the large wheel was unveiled. 20 parts made up the wheel. In increments of 5 cents, it rose to precisely $1. Players aimed to land on the dollar symbol without falling over as they spun the wheel. A bonus would be awarded if they managed to land on a single dollar. That incentive was $1,000 from 1975 to 1978. Additional bonus spins were added later on, and the jackpot was increased. A tension-building mechanism was built inside the wheel. The portions were precisely weighed and measured. It seems as though the dollar was never far away, yet elusive nonetheless. It made those times really memorable. Bob Barker was the glue that kept everything together. October 4, 1972 was the date of his debut as host. His tenure ended on June 15, 2007. All 6,586 episodes have been counted. He co-hosted Truth or Consequences at initially, but hosting The Price is Right completely consumed him. After executive producer Frank Wayne passed away in March 1988, Barker took on even more responsibilities. His new role is that of executive producer. In addition to assisting with game design, he also came up with the idea for The Price is Right $1 Million Spectacular, a primetime special edition of the show. There was something else for which Barker became famous. He repeated the same message at the conclusion of each show. "Help get the pet population under control," he said. "Has your pet had spaying or neutering?" It was incorporated into the show's canon. Those were the words that millions of viewers heard daily. The CBS network gambled when Barker stepped down in 2007. Comedian Drew Carey was chosen to replace them as host. October 2007 marked the debut of Carey's episode. Devoted followers were uncertain at first. Barker exhibited poise and dignity. As time went on, Carey became more laid back and informal, but he eventually discovered his groove. He has hosted over 3,269 episodes so far. He maintained the central theme of the show. He was respectful of the past, yet he added his own flair and wit. "It flies away," Carey stated in a People magazine interview. "It's just so much fun." Unbelievable events unfolded on The Price is Right on July 22, 2008. The game of Plinko was taken up by a college student. After losing her initial chip, she fell into the $10,000 spot. One could hear the applause from the audience. The second chip she used had the same effect. Her third chip landed in the $10,000 spot as well. That was an unprecedented occurrence. 3 consecutive flawless drops. Her winnings were already $30,000. The crowd rose to its feet. There was a lot of yelling. Almost magical. Everything changed, though, as she was about to drop her 4th chip. A stage director sprinted onto the platform. He pounced on the opportunity and knocked the chip out of someone's hand. No one moved. "Tell Drew Carey, the game is fixed." He leaned in close. A member of the crew swiftly removed the participant off the Plinko platform and directed them to sit at the base of the stage. Drew got up and left without uttering a word. Cloaks were drawn back. There was a blackout in the studio. Attempting to assuage the crowd's fears, the announcer ultimately confessed his ignorance of the situation. Silence filled the room for around 15 minutes. In the midst of a historic moment, the game abruptly ended, and everyone was confused as to why. Unexpectedly bizarre was the truth. The show took a 2-week hiatus prior to the taping. Ads for the video game Price is Right were filmed by the marketing team at the studio during the break. They manipulated the Plinko board to make the commercial look thrilling. Side by side, they strung slender fishing lines across the $10,000 slot. The chips were always led to the center by these lines. The ad tactic was standard fare. However, the lines remained in place when production on the actual performance resumed. As far as anyone could tell, the board was still rigged. Everyone else, Drew included, as well as the crew and stage managers. That is, until those 3 consecutive $10,000 dips occurred. Everything appeared normal. Such a run would be extremely difficult to achieve. It was obvious to the producers that something was amiss. That is the reason behind the mid-taping interruption of the game. Fortunately, CBS's policies and procedures intervened. The decision was made to allow the contestant to retain her $30,000 prize money. That decision probably averted a legal crisis and kept viewers from losing interest in the program. After that, they res-hopped the whole game after removing the fishing lines. Using all 5 chips, the competitor resumed playing Plinko. Her prize this time was $3,000. On December 5, 2008, fans didn't see a single sign of mayhem in the broadcast. There was no longer any mess. You might see the res-hot version in the final edit. There was a near disaster, but no one at home noticed. Years passed with the tale shrouded in secrecy. How near The Price is Right came to a huge scandal was known only by those in that studio. The crew responded quickly and effectively, though, so the program could continue. In an interview that Drew Carey gave to SiriusXM in 2021, he discussed the day in detail. A trip to prison was in his future, he declared violently. "This is going to be the end of my career. Something scandalous is about to happen." Taking over for Bob Barker in 2007, he had only been the show's host for a year. To him, it seemed like the show might be off the air. The quiz show scandals of the 1950s are the reason for the stringent regulations of game shows. The events that followed resulted in federal legislation outlawing game fixing in all its forms. Shortly after making this error, Drew realized it could lead to serious problems. There were other scandals as well. Bob Barker was a beloved TV personality for many years. Over the course of 35 years, he became famous as host of The Price is Right. Behind the scenes, though, things were looking rather different from what viewers saw on film. The show's female employees started speaking out in the 90s. According to what they said, there was a lot of intimidation, prejudice, and harassment at work. Diane Parkinson, a model, sued Barker for $8 million in 1994. According to her, he coerced her into having sexual encounters, the duration of which was 3 years. Parkinson asserted that Barker had explicitly threatened to fire her if she disobeyed his demands. According to her, he requested oral sex after dragging her into his dressing room in between performances. Barker had been in his 70s for quite some time. Claiming that Parkinson had pursued him, he denied everything. She aspired to follow in Mrs. Bob Barker's footsteps, he claimed. As a result of mounting legal fees and health complications, Parkinson decided to drop the claim. Her case, however, brought to light something that many had concealed for a long time. In 1995, Holly Hallstrom was another model that was let go. Weight increase due to medicine was cited as the explanation. However, Hallstrom held the belief that her refusal to back Barker in the Parkinson case was the true motive. She went to court against him on July 2, 1996. She leveled accusations of emotional abuse, violation of contract, medical discrimination, age discrimination, and sex discrimination against him. For nearly a decade, the dispute dragged on in court. She was repeatedly blocked by the motions filed by Barker's legal team. She claimed that settlements were given to her, but she was asked to remain silent in exchange. That was her refusal. In order to preserve her freedom to free speech, she opted to accept less money. A multi-million-dollar settlement was paid to Hallstrom in October 2005. Subsequently, she established a foundation to assist victims of workplace violence who lack the financial means to defend themselves. Other characters on the show were affected by Hallstrom's case. Both Janice Pennington and Kathleen Bradley, who were models, were let go after testifying on her behalf. Since 1972, Pennington had been an employee on the show. The first black permanent model on the program was Bradley, who began in 1990. Cheryl Paris and Linda Riegert, both of whom worked as production assistants, were also fired. Additionally, they had advocated for Hallstrom. It was an unambiguous message. Standing up to Barker would result in your expulsion. Sharon Fryam, another employee, also went to court on her own. She blamed sexual harassment and other inappropriate conduct on set for her dismissal. Additionally, model Lenny Shaw Cole went to court in 2011. Her 7-count lawsuit included allegations of sexual harassment and false detention, among others. 2 producers on the show, she claimed, had treated her badly. Years following the initial litigation, Cole's case demonstrated that the issues persisted. It wasn't simply women who were poisoned by the show's culture. Furthermore, it displayed bias. Hallstrom and others testified under oath that the call sheets marked black contestants with a B. After the majority of the white contestants had already been selected, they were introduced in the third act. As far as Hallstrom is concerned, Barker was against having a large number of black participants. She went on to say that he would playfully flee if they attempted to embrace him. It was a joke, though. For much too long, it has been tolerated as part of a routine. One of Barker's veteran employees spoke out in 2007, almost 4 months after the retiree had already left. Deborah Curling had been a candidate screener for 24 years. Racism, sexual harassment, and psychological torture were the grounds for her claim. The show's culture, she claimed, was the final straw that broke her. Staff members of The Price is Right work behind the scenes of the show, amid the cheerful host and vibrant set. Something entirely else was at hand. There was a pattern of abuse and silence shown by the cases. Some people lost their careers, some their health, and still others spent countless years enduring unjust court proceedings. In 2007, Drew Carey became host of The Price is Right. He has a reputation for years as a welcoming and entertaining host. He kept his grin and jokes going with each competitor and will spin. However, by 2025, that reputation had begun to deteriorate. On March 21, a number of credible sources made some very severe accusations. They claimed that Carey had fostered an unhealthy atmosphere at work. Workers of staff claimed that he frequently screamed at crew workers while filming. On occasion, it occurred during taping. Sometimes it took place behind closed doors. Taking legal action was something that at least 7 crew members were considering. They claimed this pattern of conduct persisted for a number of months. A lot of tension was building up behind the scenes. Someone on the production crew noticed a change in Carey's demeanor at the end of 2024. On certain days, he was lively and amiable. He may act withdrawn or furious out of the blue the following day. He abruptly left the set while filming in February 2025. Delays occurred due to the 45-minute break. Candidates had already been chosen and were now just waiting. Staff members began to communicate with one another about Carey's emotional state through nonverbal clues after that day. 3 long-term crew members departed in the beginning of 2025. They all agreed that it was because of the unpleasant work environment. Something was clearly wrong with the show itself. There was one particularly awful show that aired on December 12, with 2,024 viewers. Its online popularity skyrocketed. The identical bid was submitted by 2 competitors on Bidders Row. Someone actually put $10,000 down as a guess. One participant in Safecrackers failed to adhere to the most fundamental regulations. They need Carey's explanation multiple times. She won a TV and then said, "Oh, I did? Guess where I left it?" On pushover, another competitor disregarded the audience and knocked every block off its pedestal. Absolutely nobody was able to accept it. In her pricing game, only Linda came out on top. With only 2 days to go, the program had more than 2.3 million views on YouTube. February 2025 followed. The show once had participants guess how much an iPhone 6 would cost. People started speculating about $7,500. Someone other bet $0. $7,000. In reality, it cost $1,969. Gestural gasps escaped the assembled multitude. With an expression that said, "I hope the marketing people at Apple are watching this," Carrie turned to the camera. Although the internet had a range of reactions, the crowd found it humorous. For some, it was comical. Carrie, according to some, crossed a line. Watching the host make fun of the contestants on national TV was something they didn't appreciate. Within a day, that video had amassed over 300,000 views. On November 20, 2024, a less significant controversy occurred. Line M Up featured an individual by the name of Agnes. In order to win a car, she had to arrange numbers. "The 4 is incorrect," Carrie replied after her initial guess, "so you must adjust it to a 2. A yell came from the audience. Carrie told her, "They want you to make this a 0. When she asked if that was right, he repeated it. Agnes made the change and won. One fan later accused Carrie of helping too much. CBS didn't say anything about the moment, but people on the crew said it wasn't against the rules. Hosts are not supposed to guide players, but there's no rule about repeating what the audience says. On October 23, 2024, The Price is Right aired what fans quickly called one of its worst showcase rounds in years. The 2 finalists, Anissa and Luis, had made it all the way to the end. But when the curtain lifted, what they saw didn't match the moment. The first showcase offered trips to New Orleans, Iceland, and Ireland. Nice destinations on their own, but longtime viewers noticed something missing. No beach? No tropical paradise, not even a luxury resort. The second showcase didn't help either. It included a set of diamond jewelry, a sound system, and a Mitsubishi Mirage. That car, according to fans online, was the cheapest ever featured on the show. Anissa looked crushed on camera. And it wasn't just her. Social media exploded. Viewers accused the producers of cutting corners. Trying to save money ahead of the show's 10th episode in February 2025. Some called it a betrayal of the game's legacy. Others just called it lazy. Either way, the damage was done. The showcase had let people down. That wasn't the only controversy that season. In another episode, longtime announcer Rich Fields made a simple mistake. While describing a prize package, he called an HP computer a Dell. Harmless, right? Not on this show. The Price is Right, as a strict rule. If a prize is described incorrectly, the contestant gets whatever was announced, not what was actually shown. That one word slip cost the show thousands of dollars, and it came with a twist. The contestant had overbid by nearly $5,000. Under normal rules, that would have disqualified them. But because of the error, the prize had to be awarded anyway. This wasn't just a fluke. It showed how tightly the show operates. Every word, every product, every price, everything has to be perfect. One small mistake can throw everything off and cost real money. But the biggest shock often comes after the game. Contestants may leave the stage smiling. But reality hits once the tax letter arrives. Every prize on the show is taxed based on its full retail value, and it all starts with California state taxes. The money is due before the contestant can even touch their prize. That moment of joy can turn into panic. In 2013, schoolteacher Sherry Heil won a $157,300 Audi R8 Spider. At the time, it was the most expensive prize in the show's history. Then came the bill. She owed $12,000 to California, another $14,915 to her home state of Washington, and $34,453 to the IRS. That's over $61,000 in taxes. Contestants can't take a cash alternative. It's the prize or nothing. Many winners just walk away. Back in 2008, something happened that changed the show forever. A retired weatherman named Terry Neese placed a showcase bid of exactly $23,743. He hit the number down to the last dollar. The prizes were a karaoke machine, a pool table, and a 17-foot camper. When the total was revealed, production came to a halt. For 45 minutes, no one moved. Behind the scenes, producers were convinced it had to be a cheat. One of them, Kathy Greco, actually ran off stage in disbelief. Host Drew Carey wasn't thrilled either. Later, he admitted he was furious and announced the win through clenched teeth. But Nice insisted there was no trick. He had memorized pricing patterns and used numbers with personal meaning, his wedding date and his wife's birth month. After a full investigation, the show cleared him. Still, producers didn't want it to happen again. After that day, they began changing prices more often and mixing in new items just to keep contestants guessing. Behind the colorful set and spinning wheels, The Price is Right has always been a carefully calibrated machine. But even the smallest cracks in the system, whether it's a weak prize lineup, a slip of the tongue, a surprise tax bill, or a perfect bid, can shake the whole thing. And when it does, millions of people are watching.